I used to think the most humiliating sound in the world was a customer opening my store door, looking around, then leaving without buying anything. But I was wrong. The worst sound was my own cash register, printing a receipt with nothing on it. No sale, no money, just paper sliding out like the machine was laughing at me. At night, I stood behind the counter of Golden Hour Market, staring at a row of expired sandwiches I could not even afford to throw away. Rain hammered the windows. The neon sign outside blinked like it was dying. Half the lights in the ceiling flickered. The coffee machine made a choking sound every few minutes, even though no one had bought coffee since morning. I had $42 in the register, 3 eviction warnings taped inside my office, and a landlord who wanted me gone because a rich developer had offered to buy the whole block. That developer was Victor. Everyone in the neighborhood knew him. He wore suits that cost more than my freezer section. He bought failing businesses, smiled at the owners, then replaced them with luxury buildings nobody local could afford. To him, my store was not a store. It was a stain on his blueprint. Earlier that day, he had come in with Ava. Ava used to stand beside me when the store was barely surviving and say we would make it work. Then she got tired of counting coins with me. She got tired of cheap dinners. She got tired of my promises that sounded brave but never became real. When Victor walked in, she stood slightly behind him, wearing a white coat and a look that told me she had finally chosen the winning side. Victor placed a buyout contract on my counter like he was setting down a napkin. He told me I had 3 days before the bank and the city inspectors crushed me. He told me taking his offer was the smart thing to do. He told me pride was expensive. Ava did not say much. She just looked around at the dusty shelves, the slow fan, the cracked tile near the soda fridge, and said I should stop pretending this place had a future. That sentence hit harder than the eviction notices. After they left, I stayed open until midnight because closing felt like admitting defeat, but no one came, not one customer. So I locked the door, leaned against the counter, and whispered to myself that tomorrow would be different. That was when the cash register rang. The drawer shot open with a loud metallic crack. I jumped so hard I knocked over a jar of cheap candy. A receipt slid out, long and clean, covered in black letters that looked burned into the paper. No items. No total. Only one line. Destination available. Year 1888. Trade window opens in 10 seconds. I stared at it until my eyes hurt. Then the lights went out. The whole store groaned like a ship caught in a storm. The shelves rattled. The freezers shook. The rain outside vanished in one sharp instant, and the windows became pure white. My first thought was that the power had finally exploded and killed me. My second thought was that death smelled strangely like horse manure. When the light faded, the rain was gone. The city street outside my windows had vanished. In its place was a muddy road lined with wooden buildings, oil lamps, wagons, and people wearing old-fashioned clothes. Men with dusty boots stopped in the street and stared at my glass door like a glowing alien temple had landed in the middle of their town. My neon sign still buzzed above the entrance. Golden Hour Market. But outside there were no cars, no streetlights, no power lines. A horse screamed. A man dropped a crate. And I realized my failing store had not died. It had traveled through time. For a few seconds I did nothing. My mind simply refused to accept it. I looked at my phone, no signal. I looked at the security monitor. The cameras showed the same impossible street. I looked at the receipt again. At the bottom, new words appeared. Store zone protected, no forced entry, no harm to owner inside property, return window, when register reaches $100 in trade value. I laughed once, but it came out weak. $100. Even time travel wanted me to make rent. Then came the knocking. A group of rough-looking men stood outside. They looked like miners or cowboys or both. One pointed at the refrigerators, another pointed at the lights. Their faces were filled with fear, greed, and hunger. My first instinct was to hide. My second instinct was better. I was a store owner. A store owner sells. So I opened the door halfway, stood behind the protected line of the entrance, and held up a bottle of cola. Their eyes widened like I was holding a jar full of stars. They asked what it was. I told them it was black sugar water from the East, chilled by a secret machine. That was the first lie I ever sold through time. One man offered a silver coin, another offered 2, a third offered a small pouch of gold dust. My hand almost shook when I took it. To them, one cold cola was a miracle. To me, it was a 99-cent bottle I had bought in bulk. I sold 12 bottles in 10 minutes. Then I sold canned peaches, chocolate bars, matches, cheap aspirin, sewing needles, batteries they did not understand, and flashlights that made grown men step backward and pray under their breath. I did not explain anything. Explanation lowers value, mystery raises it. When someone asked how much a flashlight cost, I looked at his belt, saw his gold pouch, and said enough to prove he respected the light. He gave me nearly 2 ounces of gold. That was when I understood the first rule of my power. Time travel was not magic. Time travel was pricing. When the register total passed $100, the receipt glowed, the street outside blurred, the store shook again, and suddenly I was back in my rainy modern city, standing behind the same counter, holding gold dust in a paper coffee cup. The clock read 12:07. Only 7 minutes had passed. I spent the rest of the night testing every corner of the store. The back door opened to my alley, the front door opened to my city. The shelves looked normal, but the cash register had changed. A new button appeared beside the old total key. Date shift. Under it, the screen showed one available destination, 1888 Frontier Town. I had no idea why that year. I had no idea who chose it, but I knew what I had to do before sunrise. I cleaned the coffee cup of gold dust, weighed it on the tiny food scale, searched the value online, and nearly collapsed. One night of selling old soda and candy had made more money than my store made in a month. But I did not celebrate. Poor people celebrate too early. I locked the gold in the freezer behind a bag of frost-burned chicken nuggets, then made a list. The past wanted cold drinks, sugar, medicine, light, mirrors, knives, clean cloth, spices, and anything that looked impossible. I wanted gold. By morning, Brooke arrived with my usual delivery, and the first thing she said was that I looked like I had fought a raccoon and lost. Brooke had been delivering to my store for years. She was the only person who did not laugh when I paid late. She had seen every kind of broke owner, every kind of liar, every kind of desperate dreamer. She knew I was desperate, but she also knew I was not lazy. I paid her overdue invoices in cash. All of them. She stared at the bills, then at me. I told her I had found a temporary opportunity. She asked if it was illegal. I told her not in this century. She did not laugh. That was why I liked her. Before noon, I emptied wholesale shelves across the city. I bought soda, instant coffee, canned meat, batteries, cheap lighters, plastic combs, cold medicine, sugar, salt, pepper, chocolate, notebooks, pencils, and every low-cost flashlight I could find. The suppliers looked at me like I had lost my mind. Good. Let people think confusion is weakness. It makes them slow. That night, I returned to 1888 with fully stocked shelves. The town was waiting. Word had spread faster than disease. By the time my store appeared, dozens of people stood outside, holding coins, jewelry, animal skins, nuggets, old banknotes, and anything else they thought the glowing shop might accept. I did not open immediately. I let them wait. Value rises when doors stay closed. Through the glass, I arranged the counter carefully. Not too much, never show too much supply. A mountain of goods makes customers bargain. A small display makes them panic. I placed 10 bottles of cola and ice, 5 cans of peaches, 1 flashlight turned on and standing upright like a holy candle. Then I opened. The first customer tried to rush in. The invisible protection threw him backward into the mud. Everyone froze. I froze too, but I recovered faster. I raised one finger and announced the rules. 1 customer at a time, no weapons drawn, no touching without paying, no threats, break a rule, lose the right to trade. My voice was calm, but inside I was shaking. The crowd obeyed. That was the second rule of my power. Protection is not just defense, it is authority. That night I made more gold than I could carry comfortably, but the real treasure was not gold, it was information. Every customer talked. They talked about mines, land, railroad rumors, future towns, storms, shortages, and rich men who hid money under floorboards. They did not know they were giving me a map of value. I sold a miner a bottle of pain medicine for a pouch of dust, then casually asked which claim produced the cleanest gold. I sold a rancher barbed wire samples from my hardware aisle and asked which land routes were being fought over. I sold a local banker a fountain pen and asked which families were buying property near the future rail station. By the end of the night, I knew where the town would grow, who would become rich, and which land nobody respected yet. The next afternoon, I walked into a modern county records office with gold money in my pocket and a smile I had not worn in years. I found old maps, old deeds, old property lines. Then I saw it. The lot where Golden Hour Market stood in my time used to be part of a forgotten freight yard in the late 1800s. Back then, it was cheap land beside mud and noise. Victor wanted my store because he needed that exact lot for his luxury tower entrance. So I went back to 1888 and bought the land before history made it expensive. I did not buy it from the richest man in town. That would have created attention. I bought tiny pieces through tired workers, widows, and gamblers. I traded medicine, lamps, and modern tools. I had contracts written. I paid witnesses. I stamped everything with careful dates. Then I brought the documents back, sealed them in airtight containers, aged them in a way even modern experts would not question, and quietly filed a legal claim through a small attorney who thought I had discovered family papers in an attic. When Victor came back on the third day with Ava and 2 city officials, he expected to watch me fold. Instead, I placed my new property claim on the counter, beside a fresh cup of coffee. Victor read the first page. His smile twitched. The officials looked confused. Ava stared at me like I had grown another head. Victor said old paper did not scare him. I told him modern judges love old paper when it is real. He left without signing anything. That was the first time I saw doubt in his eyes. And once I saw it, I became addicted. But winning one corner lot was nothing. I still had debts, I still had inspectors coming, I still had a store that looked like it should be condemned, and every night the cash register kept offering 1888 like a locked door with only one key. I needed new eras. The answer came from a broken antique. A customer in 1888 brought me a cracked pocket watch as payment. He claimed it belonged to a dead railroad investor. I almost rejected it, but the cash register beeped before I could speak. Item contains temporal value. Scan to unlock related destination. I scanned the watch. The screen flashed. New destination unlocked, year 1929, Market District. That was when the game expanded. I spent the day reading about 1929, not like a student, but like a thief reading a bank schedule. Stock crash, fear, cash shortage, people desperate to sell beautiful things for quick money. Art, jewelry, rare coins, land certificates, company shares, entire warehouses. At midnight, I pressed date shift. The store landed on a city street, full of old cars and panic. Men in suits ran past my windows. People shouted outside a bank. Newspaper boys waved headlines about collapse. The air smelled like smoke, rain, and fear. Fear is terrible for people. Wonderful for buying. I did not sell soda this time. I sold certainty. I put up a sign in the window. Gold exchanged, food sold, cash accepted, no questions. Within an hour, people were bringing me watches, diamond rings, silverware, paintings, rare books, and boxes of coins for canned food, medicine, and gold coins I had acquired from 1888. To them, my shelves looked like survival. To me, their panic looked like inventory. But 1929 taught me something the frontier had not. The past is not innocent. A group of desperate men tried to break in after seeing the jewelry pile behind my counter. One swung a crowbar at my glass door. The protection field flashed, and the crowbar bent backward like it had hit a mountain. They stared. I smiled. Then I opened the door just enough to place 1 can of beans on the sidewalk. I said the man who apologized first could buy food tomorrow. The strongest one dropped to his knees immediately. I banned the others. The crowd watched and the lesson spread. By morning, Golden Hour Market had become a rumor in 1929, a strange shop where violence failed, food never ran out, and the owner paid better than banks. Back in my time, I sold carefully, never too much gold at once, never too many antiques through one channel. Greed leaves footprints. I used small dealers, online auctions, private brokers, and pawn shops in different cities. I registered shell companies. I paid taxes before anyone asked. Poor people dodge taxes because they are afraid. Rich people pay the right taxes to become invisible. Within 2 weeks, my debts were gone. Within 3 weeks, I owned my building. Within a month, I bought the entire strip mall through 3 separate companies, so Victor would not notice until the papers were filed. That morning, Brooke walked into my office and saw the documents spread across the desk. She said only one word. "Oh." I trusted her with the first layer of the truth. I told her my store could access unusual markets. She stared at me for a long time, then asked if unusual markets needed delivery schedules. That was how Brooke became my first ally. I did not show her the time shift yet, not because I distrusted her, but because information is like fire. Give it too early, and even friends can burn down your house by accident. Her job was modern logistics. She helped me buy goods in quantities that looked boring. Canned food for discount chains, flashlights for emergency kits, batteries for camping stores, medicine for charity drives. Nothing screamed time travel. Everything had paperwork. With Brooke handling the visible world, I could focus on the impossible one. The next unlock came from 1929, a brass access badge from a radio laboratory. The register scanned it and opened year 1969. I expected moon landing excitement. Instead, the store appeared near a manufacturing district at night, with factory workers smoking outside and music pouring from distant cars. At first, 1969 seemed less valuable. They had electricity, supermarkets, medicine, phones. My cheap tricks lost power. Then I noticed something. They had no laptops, no smartphones, no lithium batteries, no microSD cards, no solar power banks, no modern LED floodlights. To them, my pocket calculator looked like a government secret. But I did not sell future tech openly. That would create danger. Instead, I sold small improvements wrapped in ordinary lies. A warehouse owner bought LED lights from me after I claimed they were experimental industrial imports. A factory supervisor bought modern work gloves, safety masks, and compact tools. A local electronics hobbyist bought a calculator and nearly cried. Then I learned the most valuable thing 1969 could give me. Not gold, not antiques, patents, factories, companies before they became giants. I bought small amounts of stock in businesses I knew would explode decades later. I opened accounts through trusts using identities built from old legal records. I could not bring billions back directly, but I could plant seeds, tiny, boring seeds. The kind that become forests while everyone else sleeps. Meanwhile, Victor noticed his project was dying. He sent inspectors. Brooke had already upgraded the store's visible systems using my money. New wiring, new fire suppression, new floors, new refrigeration. Every permit was clean. He sent lawyers. My property documents were older than his company. He sent reporters. Ava was one of them. She came alone this time, holding a recorder, wearing the same kind of coat as before but without Victor beside her. She asked how a failing store owner suddenly had money. I told her I had found underserved customers. She asked where. I looked at the clock behind her and said everywhere. Her eyes narrowed. Ava was not stupid. That was what made her dangerous. She had mocked me when I was poor, but she also knew my habits. She knew I did not gamble. She knew I did not have rich family. She knew golden hour market had been dying too completely to recover naturally. She left with suspicion instead of answers. That night, the register printed a warning. Observation risk rising. Unlock defensive trade options. A new destination appeared. Year 2147, Urban Salvage Zone. For the first time, I hesitated. The past was dangerous but understandable. The future was a dark ocean. Anything could be waiting there. Machines, governments, diseases, weapons, people who understood time travel better than I did. But fear is just another price tag. So I stocked the shelves with things no future person should care about. Handmade soap, paper books, fresh fruit, real coffee beans, cotton clothes, old vinyl records, printed photographs, wooden toys, bottled spring water, and cigarettes I did not even like selling. Then I pressed date shift. The store landed under a purple sky. Outside, towers rose like black glass mountains. Drones moved between them. Broken screens covered the walls. The street was clean in some places and burned in others. The air hummed with invisible machines. For one full minute, nobody noticed me. Then a child wearing a breathing mask saw the Apple display. She screamed. Within 10 minutes, people crowded outside my store, not for technology, but for fruit. Real fruit. Not printed nutrient gel, not synthetic flavor cubes, real apples with stems, real oranges with peel, real coffee that smelled like soil and rain. A single apple bought me a handful of glowing credit chips. A bag of coffee bought me a palm-sized battery that could power my entire store for a month. A paper book bought me a medical scanner. A box of vinyl records bought me a cracked personal drone. I watched future people fight tears over things my era threw away. That was the third rule of my power. Every age is poor in something. Find what they lack and you become king. But the future also noticed too fast. Halfway through my second trading night in 2147, a black armored vehicle stopped outside. Soldiers stepped out with weapons that made no sound. A drone scanned my windows. A voice ordered me to open for inspection. The protection field pulsed. I stayed behind the counter. They fired once. The beam hit the doorway and vanished. The soldiers froze. I placed a paper cup of fresh coffee on the counter, opened the door 1 inch, and said inspection was available for paying customers only. No one laughed. Their leader tried threats. I ignored him. Threats are cheap. Hunger is expensive. I had fresh oranges behind me, and every soldier stared at them. So I made my first future deal. They would not enter. They would not report me for 24 hours. In exchange, each soldier could buy 1 fruit item, 1 coffee, and 1 paper object. The leader wanted to refuse. His own soldiers broke first. By the end of the hour, military discipline had lost to caffeine. When I returned home, I carried 3 future batteries, 2 scanners, a damaged drone, and a bundle of material samples harder than steel but lighter than plastic. I also carried fear, because one of the credit chips had a message burned into it after I got back. Temporal anomaly registered. I did not sleep that day. Instead, I found Nolan. Technically, Nolan found me. He came into Golden Hour Market to buy an energy drink and saw a future battery sitting under my counter because I had been too tired to hide it. He stared at it for 3 seconds too long. Most people would have said it looked cool. Nolan asked why its casing had a molecular lattice pattern that no commercial manufacturer on Earth could produce. I immediately charged him $10 for the energy drink to buy time. He paid without looking away from the battery. Nolan was an engineer, but not the polished kind who gave presentations. He was the kind who forgot meals because machines were talking to him in a language only he understood. His shoes never matched. His backpack clinked when he walked. He had been fired from 2 labs for ignoring managers and solving problems he was not assigned. Perfect. I hired him on the spot as a repair consultant. He asked what he would repair. I said tomorrow. The next day I showed him 1 future battery, 1 broken drone, and 1 medical scanner with half its casing cracked. He did not ask where they came from. He whispered that if I had stolen them from the government, he wanted no details and full access. I told him he could study them under 3 rules: no internet uploads, no outside labs, no questions until I trusted him. He agreed before I finished. With Brooke moving goods, Nolan decoding the future, and me controlling the register, Golden Hour Market transformed from a struggling shop into a quiet empire engine. But empires attract knives. Victor struck through the bank. He bought pieces of old debt connected to the strip mall, then tried to trap my companies in court. It was elegant, cruel, exactly his style. He could not take my land directly, so he wanted to freeze my assets until I drowned in legal fees. For 1 afternoon, it almost worked. My accounts were flagged. My suppliers panicked. Brooke called me while standing in a warehouse full of canned food we could not legally move. That was the day I learned anger can make the mind sharp if you do not let it drive. Victor had money in one era. I had many. I went to 1929 and bought debt ledgers from collapsing offices. I went to 1969 and bought forgotten corporate records from storage warehouses before they were destroyed. I went to 1888 and found the original mineral rights under the land Victor planned to build on. Then I went to 2147 and traded antique fountain pens for a predictive legal analysis system that could map ownership chains faster than any modern law firm. By sunrise, I had something better than a defense. I had a noose. Victor's company had unknowingly built part of its fortune on land with unresolved historical claims, tiny claims, dusty claims, claims so old no one alive cared. But courts care when someone with money makes them care. I filed quietly. Then I leaked just enough to make his investors nervous. His stock dipped. Then I bought. He attacked again. I leaked more. His lenders demanded explanations. I bought more. By the time Victor realized the small investment fund circling his company was mine, I owned enough of his debt to request private meetings with his board. He came to my store that night, not with Ava, not with officials, not with fake kindness. Alone. He stood in front of the counter where he had once placed the buyout contract and asked what I wanted. I almost told him I wanted respect. But respect given under pressure is just fear wearing perfume. So I told him I wanted his warehouse district. He laughed. Then I placed copies of the mineral claims, debt positions, and investor panic reports in front of him. His laughter stopped. The warehouse district was ugly, polluted, and half empty. To Victor, it was dead weight. To me, it was space. Space for laboratories, storage, factories, and the biggest time trade operation ever hidden behind a chain-link fence. He signed a transfer under the name of one of my companies. When he left, his face looked calm, but his hand crushed the paper cup I had given him. That was when I knew he would not stop. Good. A strong enemy keeps the blade sharp. The new warehouse district became my shell. Brooke turned it into a logistics hub. Trucks came and went with ordinary labels: dried goods, discount electronics, vintage restoration, medical surplus farm imports. Hidden inside were goods sorted by era. For 1888, light, medicine, steel tools, clean clothing, cheap luxuries. For 1929, food, cash, portable heat, medicine, and discreet gold. For 1969, electronics, compact tools, advanced materials disguised as prototypes. For 2147, organic goods, analog objects, untreated wood, seeds, paper, old music, natural fibers. Nolan built a sealed lab under the back of the warehouse and began opening future devices like treasure chests. He cracked the battery first. Not fully, not enough to copy it perfectly, but enough to create a modern version that was still 10 years ahead of anything on the market. He called it a miracle. I called it version 1. He founded a battery company using boring investors, boring paperwork, and boring press releases. I had learned by then that the more impossible the product, the more ordinary the launch must look. If you show the world a lightning bolt, they ask where you stole it. If you show them a slow improvement, they call it innovation. Our battery lasted twice as long, charged faster, and did not catch fire under stress. The industry laughed at first. Then independent labs tested it. Then car companies called. Then phone companies called. Then governments called. Victor called too, but I did not answer. Ava did. She published an article about my miracle comeback. It was not kind, but it was not mocking either. It painted me as mysterious, aggressive, and possibly dangerous. She listed every strange event around me: debts cleared, property claims, supply spikes, rare antiques, sudden technology, Victor's losses. She did not accuse me of time travel. No sane reporter would. But she wrote one sentence that made my blood cool. Every market Ethan touches seems to move before the rest of the world knows why. That sentence attracted the wrong eyes. Investors wanted meetings, agencies wanted audits, competitors wanted samples, thieves wanted shortcuts. One night, a private security team broke into the warehouse district. Not the store, the warehouse. That was my mistake. The store was protected, my empire was not. They cut power, jammed cameras, and entered Nolan's lab. Brooke called me from the loading bay with alarm in her voice for the first time since I had known her. I was inside the store when it happened, preparing for a 2147 run. For 3 seconds, I considered calling police. Then I remembered police arrive after the clever part is over. I hit date shift and took the store to 1888. The moment we arrived, I bought 20 crates of blasting powder from miners using modern cash and painkillers. Then I returned, loaded the crates into my truck, and drove to the warehouse like a man delivering old junk. But I did not blow anything up. Explosions are for people with no imagination. I placed the crates in the invader's escape route, opened one just enough for the smell to spread, then triggered the fire suppression system in that corridor. White foam flooded the hallway. The intruders thought the powder had been armed. They froze, afraid one spark would erase them. While they panicked, Brooke locked the doors behind them, and Nolan released a cloud of harmless cleaning, dust into the ventilation that made every thermal camera useless. I walked in wearing my green apron. The intruders were trained, armed, and furious. But they were standing knee-deep in foam, beside crates marked with old explosive labels. I offered them a choice: drop their weapons and leave through the front gate after being photographed, or test whether I was bluffing. They dropped the weapons. Of course I was bluffing. Mostly. After that, I built layers. The store was the heart, the warehouse was the ribs, the companies were skin, the lawyers were armor, the media became smoke. And I became something I had never been before. Patient. Poor Ethan had always rushed. Rich Ethan could set traps that took months to close. But the time store did not let me sit still. A new unlock appeared after Nolan repaired part of the future drone. Year 1715, Storm Harbor. The register did not explain more. It never did. So I prepared for a harbor age, waterproof lanterns, antibiotics, rum flavoring without alcohol, citrus, maps printed on waterproof paper, compasses, sewing kits, canned meat, and cheap sunglasses, because by then I understood that looking impossible was part of the product. The store appeared on a wooden dock during a storm. Waves slammed the harbor, ships groaned, men shouted in clothes soaked by rain, cannons sat along the shore like sleeping monsters. The whole world smelled like salt, tar, blood, and rotten rope. Then sailors saw my electric sign. They came like wolves. I raised the rules before opening. No drawn blades, no forced entry, one trade at a time. A huge man with a curved sword tried to laugh his way through the door. The protection field dropped him flat on his back in front of 50 witnesses. The laughter died. Respect was born. In 1715, citrus was medicine. Antibiotics were resurrection. Waterproof lanterns were sorcery. Cheap sunglasses became status symbols so absurd that captains began wearing them at night just to prove they had traded with me. But the real treasure was not gold. It was shipping routes. I traded modern printed storm maps for old cargo manifests. I traded medicine for location rumors. I traded sealed food for salvage rights to shipwrecks that my era had never found. Then I did something ridiculous. I sold weather. Using modern historical storm data, I knew when certain hurricanes had hit certain routes. I wrote warnings on thick paper, sealed them in envelopes, and sold them as sky predictions. At first, they mocked me. Then a ship ignored my warning and sank. After that, the harbor lined up for my envelopes. I did not need to control the sea. I only needed to know yesterday's disasters before they happened. That harbor made me rich in artifacts, but it also taught me how myths begin. People started calling my store the Hour Lantern. They said it appeared in storms to judge greedy men. They said the owner could not be stabbed because time itself protected him. I did not correct them. A useful myth is free security. Back home, my salvage companies began finding shipwrecks with impossible accuracy. Museums called me lucky. Investors called me brilliant. Victor called me a fraud in private, but he had no proof. Ava called me for an interview. I accepted. Not because I trusted her. Because suspicion is easier to guide when it stands in front of you. She arrived at the renovated Golden Hour Market and barely recognized it. The cracked tiles were gone. The shelves were full. The neon sign had been restored, but I kept the old register on the counter, polished and ordinary looking, like a knife hidden in a loaf of bread. Ava asked if wealth had changed me. I said poverty had changed me first. She asked whether I hated everyone who doubted me. I looked at her for a moment too long. Then I said doubt was useful because it showed me who priced me too low. That line made the interview go viral. People loved a comeback story. They loved the humble shop owner who beat a billionaire. They loved the battery company, the salvage discoveries, the warehouse jobs, the charity food programs Brooke insisted we create so our bulk purchases looked normal. They loved the myth they could understand. They had no idea the real myth was open at midnight. But Ava did something unexpected. After the interview, when the cameras were gone, she stayed near the counter. She apologized. Not perfectly, not dramatically, just quietly. She said she had judged me by my empty pockets and ignored the part of me that kept standing up. For 1 second, the old Ethan wanted to forgive everything and show her the truth. Then the register screen flickered behind her shoulder. Observation risk rising. I smiled and told her apologies were accepted, but access was not. Her face tightened. She understood enough to know I had a door she could not enter. That was safer for both of us. While my public wealth climbed, my private system became sharper. I no longer traveled randomly for profit. I built trade loops. Loop 1, buy cheap modern goods, sell them in 1888 for gold and land records. Use gold to finance modern purchases. Use land records to control legal history. Loop 2, buy Depression-era assets in 1929, sell selected antiques in my time, plant investments in companies before their rise. Loop 3, sell modern compact devices in 1969 under controlled channels, acquire early patents, factory access, and analog components that were easier to modify than modern locked systems. Loop 4, sell organic and analog goods in 2147, acquire future materials, batteries, medical devices, and market data. Loop 5, sell survival knowledge in 1715, acquire shipwreck locations, old treasure, and maritime claims. Each loop fed another. Gold bought goods, goods bought history, history bought companies, companies made technology, Technology bought the future. The future revealed what the present would soon desire. And with each cycle, I became harder to stop. Then the register unlocked a destination that did not look profitable at all. Year 1348, Walled City. The moment I read the date, my stomach tightened. Plague. I almost refused. There are markets even desperate men should fear. Disease does not care about cleverness, but the store had shown me protection before. No harm to owner inside property. Still, goods could carry danger. Air could carry danger. People could carry despair. So I prepared like a man entering a nightmare. Masks, gloves, sealed packaging, disinfectant, antibiotics, soap, clean water, simple quarantine instructions printed with pictures, no open contact, no accepting cloth, fur, or anything contaminated, gold and silver only through chemical cleaning trays. When Golden Hour Market appeared inside the walled city, it was not greeted with curiosity. It was greeted with crying. The streets were silent except for bells and wheels. People looked hollow. Some approached the glowing store like sinners approaching judgment. For the first time, I did not raise prices. Not because I had become a saint. Because dead customers do not trade and living cities remember. I sold soap for copper, clean water for silver, masks for labor promises, simple fever medicine for gold only when I had to ration it. I refused to claim miracles. I refused to let the sick crowd inside. I drew lines outside the store with chalk and enforced distance through the protection field. People hated me for it. Then they survived because of it. I used colored tokens to organize crowds, red for urgent medicine, blue for water, white for soap. Anyone who pushed lost their token. Anyone who helped carry supplies earned another. Within 3 nights, the street around my store became the most orderly part of the city. A local ruler tried to seize everything. He arrived with guards, horses, and the kind of confidence only inherited power produces. He demanded I hand over all medicine for distribution. I asked how much he would pay. He said he would pay with mercy. I closed the door. His guards tried to ram it. The ram shattered. The crowd saw. The ruler saw the crowd seeing. That mattered. I opened the door 1 inch and gave him a choice. He could buy medicine at a public price, with witnesses, or he could become the man who failed to rob the glowing store while his city watched. He paid, not because he respected me, because reputation is the oldest currency. From 1348, I did not take treasures. I took manuscripts, medical notes, family records, and 1 sealed chest of coins given by grateful merchants. More importantly, I took proof that controlling scarcity was not enough. To build something lasting, people needed rules they believed were fair, even when the rules were strict. That lesson saved me in my own time. My battery company had exploded too fast. Factories wanted exclusive deals, governments wanted priority, investors wanted control, competitors started rumors that our batteries were unsafe. Victor funded lawsuits through shadow firms. Ava's articles became sharper again because someone was feeding her partial truths. The market around me was turning into a plague city of panic, greed, and fear. So I used the token system. Not literally at first. Publicly, we announced a transparent allocation program, emergency services first, grid storage second, consumer electronics third, luxury products last. Every shipment was tracked, every delay explained, every rumor answered with test data. People expected me to chase the highest bidder. Instead, I made fairness profitable. Governments praised it, customers trusted it, competitors looked selfish when they attacked it. Victor's rumors bounced off a system that looked cleaner than his entire career. Nolan complained that I had turned plague management into corporate strategy. I told him history was just a free consulting firm if you knew where to shop. By then, my visible fortune had crossed into billionaire territory. But billionaire was a small word. Billionaires still feared markets. I had already seen markets die in 1929, starve in 1348, and mutate in 2147. I wanted something beyond billionaire. I wanted to own the roads between eras. The register seemed to hear that thought. One midnight, it printed a black receipt. Trade volume threshold reached, store upgrade available. The walls trembled, the shelves rearranged themselves while I watched. A new aisle appeared where my storage closet used to be, stretching farther than the building should allow. The freezer door now opened into a cold room larger than my entire shop. The office wall revealed a map made of shifting dates. Golden Hour Market was growing. And growth changed the rules. New function, branch inventory echo. Approved goods may replicate display sample after fair exchange. I read the line 5 times. It meant if I traded an item fairly in one era, the store could restock a limited number of matching items from my original inventory without me physically loading every box. It was not infinite. It still required supply, but it multiplied efficiency. In other words, I was no longer just a shopkeeper with a time machine. I was becoming a supply chain that punched holes through history. I celebrated by doing something insane. I sold ice cream to a desert kingdom. The destination unlocked through an old coin from 1348. The register called it year 1012, Desert Court. I prepared portable freezers, dry ice packs, fruit syrups, mirrors, steel needles, glass beads, antibiotics, and solar lamps. When the store appeared inside a blazing courtyard, surrounded by sandstone walls and stunned guards, I opened with a bowl of vanilla ice cream topped with honey. A royal official tasted one spoonful and looked like his soul had left his body to negotiate with heaven. By sunset, nobles were bidding pearls for frozen desserts. But I did not care about pearls. I wanted their libraries. So I made a rule: luxury foods could only be purchased with copies of maps, star charts, medical texts, and trade ledgers. They thought they were robbing me by giving paper for frozen cream. I was robbing the future with dessert. Those texts guided me to lost mines, forgotten ports, and old scientific ideas that modern historians still argued about. I funded research teams in my time to discover what I already knew. I bought land before rare mineral deposits were confirmed. I invested in water rights before climate models made them priceless. I used ancient trade maps to find modern shipping advantages. The world called it visionary strategy. It was mostly ice cream fraud across 1,000 years. But every rise creates a shadow. The first shadow came from 2147. I arrived with fresh goods and found the street empty. No fruit-hungry crowds, no soldiers pretending not to report me, no salvage traders, just silence under the purple sky. Then every screen on the buildings lit up with my face. Not a photo, a prediction model. It showed me older, richer, surrounded by company logos, standing beside maps of cities I had not bought yet. A voice from the screens announced that unauthorized temporal commerce was punishable by asset seizure across all reachable points. Asset seizure. They did not say execution. They said asset seizure because in the future even war sounded like accounting. Drones descended. The protection field held, but they did not attack the door. They attacked the surroundings. They cut the street, sealed the air, and projected barriers around the store. They were not trying to break in. They were trying to trap me until the return window failed. For the first time, someone had studied my limits. The register showed trade value required for return, 10,000 credits. But no customers could reach me. I had shelves full of priceless organic goods, and no one allowed to buy them. That was when panic finally touched my throat. Then I saw the drones scanning the fruit. They wanted what I had, they just had orders. Orders are a wall. Desire is a crack. I took one apple, sliced it thin, and placed the pieces in a transparent sample tray near the door. Then I activated the old speaker system and made an announcement. One apple slice for one personal memory, recorded on any device. No credits needed. The drones did not move. But people were watching from buildings. In 2147, natural food was rare, but real memories were rarer. Most people stored their lives in corporate clouds, edited and filtered until even childhood had advertisements attached. I had learned this from old conversations with future customers. A window opened across the street. Someone dropped a small memory chip attached to a string. The protection field let it pass because it was trade, not attack. I exchanged it for one apple slice using a tiny delivery hook. The register counted value, not credits. Value. The system accepted memories as trade. More chips came down, then handwritten notes, then analog photos, then old family objects hidden from corporate archives. People lowered them from windows, slid them through cracks, launched them in tiny homemade gliders. The drones tried blocking some, but they could not stop everything without destroying private property, and apparently even future tyrants feared paperwork. The return value climbed. When the military realized what was happening, they ordered all civilians to stop. That made them trade faster. I returned home with thousands of future memories and a lesson sharp enough to cut steel. A trapped market is not dead if you can redefine payment. Nolan used the memory chips to map future culture, language patterns, consumer desires, technology habits, and corporate weaknesses. Brooke used them to build future-facing product strategies decades early. I used them to identify which industries would dominate, which resources would vanish, and which cities would become valuable. My investments spread like roots under the world. Energy, water, storage, biotech, logistics, food security, rare materials, disaster infrastructure, analog luxury, data preservation. I did not buy companies because they were famous. I bought what hungry futures had already taught me they would need. And with every purchase, Victor became smaller. Not poor, never poor, but smaller. He tried one final public attack. At a major investment conference, he accused me of market manipulation, illegal technology transfer, fraud, and bribery. He did it on stage in front of cameras, with Ava in the press row and half the financial world watching. He expected me to deny everything like a sweating criminal. Instead, I thanked him. And I showed the audience my company's full safety data, independent audits, supplier maps, charity distribution numbers, and legal ownership records. Every document was clean because I had made them clean before he knew which dirt to search for. Then I revealed that one of Victor's own shell suppliers had been selling defective battery components to our competitors while shorting their stocks. He had planned to frame me with a scandal. I had bought the supplier 3 weeks earlier through a company he did not know existed. The records on the screen did not just clear me. They pointed back to him. The room went silent. Ava looked from the screen to Victor, then to me. For the first time, she saw the real shape of my weapon. I did not dodge attacks. I bought the battlefield. Victor's empire did not collapse that day, but it cracked in public. Investors fled, regulators circled, partners called lawyers. His calm voice vanished from business news for weeks. My companies surged. The media began calling me the corner store king. I hated the nickname. Brooke loved it. Nolan printed it on a mug and left it on my desk. I threw it away. He replaced it with another. For a short time, everything felt almost under control. That was when the store showed me the dinosaurs. The receipt printed at midnight with a destination that made no sense. Year unknown, prehistoric valley, biological contamination shield active, trade window unstable. I stared at the screen. Brooke, who had finally learned the full truth after the 2147 trap, stared too. Nolan looked like a child at a fireworks show. He wanted samples. Brooke wanted me to burn the receipt. I wanted to know why the store considered dinosaurs a trade opportunity. So we prepared like maniacs. Reinforced doors, remote cameras, sealed drones, raw meat, salt blocks, medical quarantine, zero open-air exchange, no stepping outside, no touching anything alive or dead without containment. When Golden Hour Market landed in the prehistoric valley, the first thing I saw was a fern taller than a truck. The second thing I saw was an eye the size of a dinner plate staring through my window. A massive predator lowered its head, sniffed my neon sign, and roared so loudly every jar on the shelves trembled. The protection field held. Nolan laughed until Brooke threatened to tape his mouth shut. At first, there were no customers, just animals, huge, dangerous, stupidly beautiful animals. I was ready to leave with samples if I could. Then the register displayed a message. Non-human trade accepted, value determined by intent and exchange. I looked at the predator outside. It looked at the raw meat inside. I placed a sealed pack of beef on a metal tray and extended it through the exchange slot. The dinosaur sniffed, took it, and dropped something from its jaws. A chunk of amber with an insect sealed inside. The register beeped. Trade accepted. Nolan nearly fainted. We spent the next hour trading meat and salt blocks to creatures that brought bones, amber, strange stones, eggshell fragments, and plants. It was the most ridiculous market I had ever opened. No language, no contracts, just hunger, curiosity, and the store deciding a dinosaur understood barter. Then a herd stampeded past the valley. Something bigger was coming. The ground shook, trees broke, the cameras flickered. A shape moved beyond the fog, too large for my brain to price. The register printed one line. Trade window collapsing. We left with seconds to spare. Back home, Nolan's samples created an entire secret research division. Ancient compounds led to new biomaterials. Amber chemistry led to preservation technology. Fossil minerals revealed geological hints. We did not clone dinosaurs because I was greedy, not stupid. Instead, we made medical adhesives, durable plastics, and a luxury line of prehistoric amber jewelry so expensive that celebrities fought over insect corpses trapped before humanity existed. The world called it bold branding. It was dinosaur meat arbitrage. Money became absurd after that. First, I checked my accounts every morning because I still felt poor in my bones. Then the numbers became too large to feel real. Millions became normal. Billions became tools. Trillions moved through corporate structures, trusts, sovereign partnerships, resource rights, patents, and assets no magazine could properly count. Public lists argued over my net worth. Some said I was the richest man in the country. Some said the richest in the world. Some said my fortune was impossible to measure because too much of it sat in private companies, mineral rights, energy grids, water systems, and foreign infrastructure. They were all wronged. My real wealth was not on any balance sheet. My real wealth was a cash register that knew where scarcity lived. Yet the higher I climbed, the more dangerous the questions became. Ava returned with a private offer. She said she had enough evidence to prove my success could not be explained by normal means, not time travel exactly but patterns, asset purchases before historical discoveries, investments before disasters, salvage finds too precise, technology leaps too clean. People might not believe the impossible, but they would believe insider trading, theft, or something worse. She could ruin the clean myth I had built. I asked what she wanted. She did not ask for money. That would have been easy. She asked to see the truth. I laughed softly because some prices are too high even when no money is involved. Then she placed a folder on my counter. Inside were photos of Victor meeting with men I did not recognize, payments to private labs, and surveillance images of my warehouse taken from drones I had not detected. Victor was no longer trying to beat me through courts or media. He was trying to find the source. Ava said he had become obsessed. He believed I had access to a hidden technology, and he wanted it before regulators, governments, or enemies did. She had followed his money because she wanted a story. What she found scared her enough to come to me. I looked at the photos, then at Ava. For once, she was not mocking, hunting, or apologizing. She was warning me. I made a decision that old Ethan never could have made. I did not fully trust her, but I gave her a role. Ava became my controlled leak. She would receive truths shaped carefully enough to protect the secret and sharp enough to cut Victor. She would publish stories about illegal surveillance, corporate sabotage, and private militarized theft. Nothing supernatural, nothing about the register, just enough reality to make Victor bleed in daylight. She asked why I believed she would not betray me. I told her I did not. That honesty satisfied her more than trust would have. Victor responded exactly as expected. He sued. He threatened. He denied. Then he made his real move. He attacked Golden Hour Market itself. Not with crowbars, not with lawyers, with demolition. A construction truck lost control at 2:13 in the morning and came straight through the front of the building. Except the store was in 1012 selling ice cream for star charts. When I returned, the truck was folded around the empty space where the storefront should have been. Security footage showed it smashing into nothing, crumpling against an invisible outline, then bursting its tires. The driver survived, confused and terrified. Victor's people had planned the crash based on my normal hours. They did not know the building was sometimes absent from reality. I stood in the parking lot at dawn, looking at the wreckage, and felt something cold settle inside me. Victor had crossed from business into war. So I stopped defending. I went hunting. First, I used Ava to expose his illegal surveillance contractors. Then I used Brooks' logistics network to identify every supplier quietly loyal to him. Then I used 1929 records to uncover old family holdings tied to his company. Then I used 2147 predictive data to model which public scandal would break investor confidence fastest. But the final blade came from 1888. Remember the land under Victor's future luxury tower, the mineral rights I had found. I had not used all of them. I had saved the ugliest piece. Clause from an old railroad contract gave the holder of certain subsurface rights access claims if construction endangered historical industrial tunnels. It was obscure, dusty, ridiculous, and completely legal after Nolan helped map the tunnels with future scanning tech. I filed emergency injunctions the same morning Ava's article dropped. Victor's main project stopped instantly. Cranes froze, workers left, lenders panicked, investors demanded answers, the city opened investigations. Victor came to my store one last time before the collapse became public. He looked older. For years he had treated me like a bug on his shoe. Now he looked at the polished floors, the quiet customers, the restored neon sign, and the old register beside my hand. He said I could not keep winning forever. I told him forever was just another market I had not opened yet. He stared at me, and for a second I thought he understood. Not the method, the scale. He understood he had been fighting a man who did not move in a straight line. Then he did something that surprised me. He smiled. Not his old controlled smile, a broken one. He said if I had found a door, someone else would find it too. Then he left. I should have felt victory. Instead, I felt the floor drop under my life. Because he was right. The store had never explained where it came from. It had never said I was unique. It had rules, upgrades, warnings, destinations. That meant design, and design meant designer. For the first time, I wondered if I had not discovered a miracle. Maybe I had stepped into someone else's business. The answer came from a receipt printed without me touching the register. Competitor signature detected. My blood went cold. A new destination appeared on the map wall, but it was not a year. It was a place between years. Trade concourse, invitation pending. Nolan begged me not to press it until he built more scanners. Brooke said any invitation sent after an enemy's warning was poison. Ava said if I disappeared, she would publish every safe file we had prepared. Practical, terrifying, useful Ava. I listened to all of them. Then I prepared anyway. Because fear had carried me from broke shop owner to the richest man alive, but only because I kept walking through it. Before entering the concourse, I made my empire harder to kill. Brooke received emergency control over supply operations. Nolan received sealed research instructions and a vault of future components. Ava received 3 timed information packages, each one designed to expose a different enemy if I did not return. My companies activated defensive ownership structures that would turn any hostile takeover into a maze of poison contracts. Then I stocked the store with the strangest inventory I had ever assembled. Gold from 1888, jewelry from 1929, micro tools from 1969, fruit seeds desired by 2147, amber from prehistoric beasts, ice cream recipes that had conquered deserts, plague-era manuscripts, storm maps, analog memories, future batteries, a single apple. A proper merchant does not enter a new market empty-handed. At midnight, I pressed date shift. The world vanished. The store did not shake this time. It unfolded. Walls stretched, the lights dimmed, and the front windows opened onto a vast hall floating in darkness. Shops stood everywhere, but none of them matched. One looked like a black temple with lanterns made of blue fire. Another looked like a vending machine the size of a cathedral. Another looked like a wooden stall carried by mechanical legs. Doors opened onto deserts, moons, battlefields, oceans, cities, and places my eyes refused to understand. Customers moved between them. Some were human. Some were not. Every shop had a sign. Every sign glowed with a different hour. Golden Hour Market had joined a marketplace outside time. And suddenly, I was not the richest man in the world. I was a new vendor in a war I had not known existed. A figure waited outside my door. No name, no face I could understand, just a person-shaped absence wearing a coat stitched with receipts. It placed 1 black coin on my counter. The register screamed without sound. Then a message burned across the screen. Debt from previous owner recognized. Previous owner. My hand tightened around the counter. I had never asked who owned Golden Hour Market before me. I had bought a failing store from a chain that vanished years ago. I thought that was normal. Another bad investment. Another dead business. Now I knew better. The faceless merchant pointed at the coin, then at me. The meaning entered my head without words. Someone had owed something before I ever turned the key to this store. And because I had awakened it, that debt had become mine. I smiled. Not because I was calm. Because every monster in every era expected fear to make me cheap. I slid the apple across the counter. A simple apple from my time, red, ordinary, fragile. The faceless merchant paused. All around the concourse, other shop doors turned toward us. Eyes, cameras, mirrors, flames, and things stranger than eyes focused on Golden Hour Market. I said one sentence, quiet enough that only the register and the thing in front of me could hear. Everything has a price. The apple vanished. The black coin cracked. The entire concourse went silent. Then every receipt in my store began printing at once. New debts, new enemies, new destinations, new wars. And behind the faceless merchant, through a doorway made of moving clocks, I saw Victor. Alive, smiling, holding a receipt of his own. That was when I realized my rise from broke shop owner to richest man on earth had only been the tutorial. The real market had just opened. And this time I was not the only one who knew how to cheat time.